I found the locket in his drawer, the one my daughter wore the day she died. My hands shook as I held it, the cold metal searing my palm. He was due back from his business trip in 3 hours, and I had to know why this was here. I rifled through the rest of the drawer, my heart hammering against my ribs. Beneath a stack of old receipts, my fingers brushed against a folded photograph. It showed a man I recognized from news clippings, the monster who took my Sarah, holding a young boy with familiar eyes. My breath caught. That boy was my son, Michael. I had to confirm this wasn't some sick coincidence. Knowing the truth tore at me, every memory of raising him now tainted. I heard the garage door rumble open an hour early. His car shouldn't be back yet. I shoved everything back, but the locket slipped from my grip, clattering on the hardwood. The front door clicked open. His voice called out, too cheerful. "Mum, I'm home early. Brought you something." I froze, the photograph still half hidden under a shirt. He was already in the hallway, his footsteps nearing the bedroom. I had seconds to decide, hide it or face him. As I reached for the picture, I noticed the date scribbled on the back. The same day Sarah died. My blood ran cold. He knew. He always knew. The door creaked open, and his shadow fell over me. I forced a smile, tucking the photograph into my apron pocket as Michael hugged me, his grip too tight. He handed me a box of pastries, his eyes darting toward the drawer I'd just closed. "Thought we could have an early treat," he said, his voice smooth. I needed to get to the safe in the basement where I kept Sarah's old things. Maybe there was more evidence. I struggled to keep my composure. Every kind word from him felt like a lie. He followed me downstairs, insisting on helping with spring cleaning, his presence a constant pressure. In the basement, I pretended to sort through boxes while he hovered near the safe. I wanted to open it without him seeing, but he kept shifting things around, blocking my path. Then, the power flickered and died, plunging us into darkness, an interruption I hadn't expected. He fumbled for a flashlight, and I used the cover to spin the safe dial. Inside, I found a journal I'd never seen, its cover embossed with a symbol matching the locket. As I flipped it open, a slip of paper fluttered out, a child's drawing of our family, with Michael labelled Son of the Shadow. He clicked the flashlight on, its beam catching the journal in my hands. "What's that, Mom?" he asked, his tone dropping to a chill. I snapped it shut, but not before seeing a fresh entry in his handwriting. "She's getting close." I lied, saying it was an old recipe book, and shoved it back into the safe, my pulse roaring in my ears. Michael's smile didn't reach his eyes as he helped me upstairs, his hand on my elbow a little too firm. I needed to call Detective Miller, the retired cop who worked Sarah's case, but my phone was in the kitchen, and Michael was watching me like a hawk. I felt my freedom slipping away. Every move felt monitored. He suggested a movie night, pulling out DVDs, including one of Sarah's favorites, a subtle pressure to unnerve me. As he set up the player, the doorbell rang, an interruption that made us both jump. It was Mrs. Gable from next door, asking to borrow sugar. I seized the chance, offering to walk her back, but Michael insisted on coming, his arm linked with mine. Outside, I spotted Miller's car parked down the street. He often checked in since retirement. I waved subtly, hoping he'd notice my distress. Back inside, Michael paused the movie and handed me a cup of tea, his gaze intense. "Drink up, Mum. You look tense." I sipped it, the warmth spreading, but then my vision blurred. The tea tasted bitter, unlike anything I'd made. He leaned in, whispering, "I know you found it. Let's talk about Dad." My limbs grew heavy, and the room spun. I woke on the couch, disoriented, with Michael pretending to watch the movie beside me. "You dozed off," he said lightly, but his knuckles were white on the remote. I had to get to the attic where I stored Sarah's cold case files. Maybe there was something linking Michael's adoption to the killer. I lost trust in my own home. Every creak of the floorboards felt like a trap. He offered to make dinner, humming a tune I remembered from Sarah's funeral. Another pressure play. While he cooked, I slipped away, climbing the attic stairs quietly. I wanted to find the file on the orphanage, but the boxes were rearranged, as if someone had been here recently. Suddenly, the attic light blew out, plunging me into dimness. I felt along the shelves, my fingers closing on a dusty folder labeled St. Mary's Orphanage. Inside, I found adoption papers with a forged signature, mine, and a note from the director, long dead, warning of family connections to violent incidents. Then, a small surprise. A recent photo fell out, showing Michael with a man who looked just like the killer, both smiling in front of my house. The attic door swung open below. "Looking for something, Mum?" Michael called up, his voice echoing. I shoved the photo into my sleeve, but he started up the stairs, each step deliberate. I backed toward the attic window, the photo burning against my skin. Michael reached the top step, his expression calm, but his eyes dead. "I think it's time we shared secrets," he said, blocking my exit. I had to get that photo to Detective Miller, but my phone was downstairs, and the window was 2 stories up. I felt my safety vanish. I was trapped with the boy I'd raised, now a stranger. He stepped closer, pulling a small knife from his pocket, not to threaten, but to clean his nails, a chilling pressure. "Dad always said you were too curious," he mused. And an interruption came. A siren wailed outside, growing louder. Police cars pulled up next door. Mrs. Gable must have called them about a noise complaint. Michael's composure cracked. He glanced toward the noise, and I ducked under his arm, bolting for the stairs. But he grabbed my wrist, his grip iron tight. "Not so fast." I yanked free, stumbling down, but at the bottom I saw my purse had been emptied, my phone missing. He descended slowly, holding up my cell. "Looking for this?" Then, a small shock. The screen lit up with a text from Miller. "Got your wave? Coming in?" Michael's smile vanished. "Inviting guests, Mum? Bad move?" He advanced, and I backed into the hall closet, the door slamming shut behind me. The lock clicked from the outside. The lock clicked, and I was trapped in the dark closet, my heart pounding against my ribs. I had to get out before Michael did something worse. But the space was cramped with coats and old shoes, the air thick with dust. I fumbled for the doorknob, but it was solidly locked from the outside. My mind raced back to Sarah's face, the way she laughed, and now her killer's son had me cornered in my own home. I heard Michael's footsteps pacing outside, his voice low as he spoke to someone on my phone, probably stalling Miller. I needed to find a tool to pick the lock or make noise to alert the detective. My fingers brushed against a metal hanger. I bent it into a hook, my hands shaking. Just as I started working on the lock, the doorbell rang loudly, followed by Miller's firm voice calling my name. Michael's footsteps hurried away, and I redoubled my efforts, the hanger scraping against the mechanism. Then, a small surprise. My hand bumped a loose board in the closet wall, and behind it, I felt a cold, familiar object. Sarah's missing diary, the one I thought was lost years ago. I pulled it out, my breath catching. Outside, the voices grew heated, and I heard a scuffle. The lock jiggled, and the door swung open to reveal Miller, his face grim. But Michael was gone from the hallway. Miller helped me out, his grip steady. "He slipped out the back," he said, nodding toward the kitchen. Then he added, "But he left this." He held up my phone, smashed beyond use. My stomach dropped as I saw a note tucked in his hand. "Game on, Mom." I clutched Sarah's diary to my chest, its weight a small comfort in the chaos. Miller and I moved to the living room, where I had to piece together what Michael knew and where he might have gone. It was clear that my home felt violated, every shadow a threat. Miller checked the doors while I skimmed the diary, finding entries about Sarah's fear of a watcher in the weeks before her death. Michael's pressure lingered. He'd clearly been through my things, and I noticed family photos askew, his face scratched out in several. As Miller called for backup on his own phone, the lights flickered and died again, an interruption that set my nerves on edge. We used his flashlight, and I spotted a floorboard near the sofa lifted slightly. I pried it up and found a stash of cash and a key labeled Storage 214. I was struck by a sudden realization. Storage 214 was the unit I'd rented after Sarah died, filled with her belongings I couldn't bear to sort. Miller's phone buzzed. His contact at the station said Michael's adoption records were sealed by a judge with ties to the original case. We headed for the garage, but my car tires were slashed, and Miller's had a note under the wiper. "Stay out of it, old man." Miller cursed, pulling out his gun. "He's closer than we thought," he muttered, scanning the dark street. I followed his gaze and saw a figure watching from the neighbor's hedge. Michael, smiling faintly before melting into the night. We took Miller's car, the engine roaring to life as I directed him toward the storage facility across town. I needed to see what was in Unit 214 before Michael could destroy it. But the drive felt endless, each red light a torment. I'd lost my phone and my sense of safety. Miller's tight grip on the wheel showed he felt it too. Michael's pressure was everywhere. A text popped up on Miller's phone from an unknown number. "Turn back now." Miller ignored it, but his knuckles were white. Suddenly, a car swerved in front of us, forcing us to brake hard, an interruption that jarred us both. It was a random accident, but it cost us precious minutes. At the facility, the night guard was missing, and the gate was unlocked, a bad sign. We found Unit 214, the lock broken. Inside, boxes were torn open, Sarah's things strewn about, but one small chest was untouched. I opened it and found childhood drawings Michael had made, all depicting a shadow dad and our family, with dates matching Sarah's disappearance. Unexpectedly, tucked beneath was a letter from the orphanage director, apologizing for hiding Michael's true parentage out of fear. Miller's radio crackled. Backup was delayed. Then, a noise from outside. Footsteps on gravel. We stepped out, and the unit door slammed shut behind us, locking automatically. Michael stood there, holding a remote. "Should have left it buried, Mum," he said, pressing a button. A small explosion echoed from inside the unit, and smoke billowed out. He vanished into the darkness, leaving us trapped outside with the evidence burning. The storage unit blazed, flames licking the metal door as Miller and I backed away, the heat searing my skin. I had to salvage something from the fire or find another way to prove Michael's guilt. But the smoke choked us, and sirens wailed in the distance. I'd lost physical pieces of Sarah forever, and Miller's trust in the system was shaken. Michael's pressure intensified. He'd planned this, leaving no trace behind. As firefighters arrived, we were pushed to the perimeter, and I spotted a familiar car, Mrs. Gable's, parked nearby, its driver watching us. Then she waved me over, her face pale. "I saw him earlier," she whispered, handing me a folded map. "He asked about your routines." I unfolded it. Marked locations included Sarah's grave and my bank. Unexpectedly, scrawled in the margin was Dad's safe house, lake cabin. Miller took the map, his eyes narrowing. "We need to move now," he said, but then his phone rang. It was his superior, ordering him to stand down due to jurisdictional issues. Miller argued, but the call ended abruptly. He looked at me, grim. "They're blocking us." We drove toward the lake, the road dark and winding. Nearing the cabin, I saw a light inside, and a figure moved behind the curtains. Miller parked a distance away, drawing his gun. "Stay here," he ordered. But as he stepped out, a shot rang out, and the car's front tire blew. We ducked, and I saw Michael standing on the porch, rifle in hand. He called out, "Come on in, Mum. Let's end this." I crouched in the car, the blown tire rendering us immobile as Miller returned fire, his shots pinging off the cabin's wooden walls. I had to get inside that cabin and confront Michael, but the risk was immense. One wrong move and we'd both be dead. Miller's radio was dead, and my hands trembled with the weight of Sarah's diary still in my pocket. Michael's pressure was absolute. He had the high ground and the weapons, and he knew this terrain. Then, suddenly, a dog barked loudly from the woods, drawing Michael's attention for a split second. Miller used the distraction to advance, but I stayed low, spotting a cellar door partially hidden by brush near the cabin. I slipped out, crawling toward it, the damp earth soaking my knees. The door was unlocked, and I descended into a dark, musty space. Using my phone's dead screen for dim light, I saw shelves lined with canned goods and, shockingly, a wall covered in photos of me and Sarah over the years, some from recent months. To my shock, among them was a picture of Michael as a child, standing with his biological father at this very cabin, both holding hunting knives. I heard footsteps above, and Michael's voice echoed down, "Find the family album, Mom?" The cellar door creaked open, light flooding in. He stood at the top, smiling. "Time to join the rest of them." He started down the steps, and I backed into a corner, my hand closing around a rusty shovel leaning against the wall. He reached the bottom, his eyes cold, and said, "Dad would have loved this." I swung the shovel, but he caught it easily, his grip like iron. "Nice try," he whispered, pulling a knife from his belt. Outside, Miller shouted my name, but the cellar door slammed shut, locking us in together. Michael lunged with the knife, but I swung the shovel hard, catching him in the shoulder and making him stagger back. I had to disarm him and get that cellar door open before he recovered, but the space was tight, and every move risked a fatal slip. He laughed, a cold sound that echoed off the stone walls, and advanced again, his eyes gleaming in the dim light. "You always were stubborn, Mom," he taunted, circling me. I backed toward the shelves, my hand brushing against a jar of pickles. Suddenly, a loud banging started on the cellar door above. Miller was trying to break in, an interruption that distracted Michael for a second. I used the moment to grab a metal rod from the shelves and swing it at his knife hand. The knife clattered to the floor, and I kicked it away. But then, a small surprise. As the rod hit the shelf, a hidden compartment sprang open, revealing a stack of letters tied with ribbon. Michael's expression shifted from anger to panic. "Don't touch those," he snarled, lunging for them. I snatched one and saw it was from his biological father, detailing how he'd orchestrated the adoption to get close to me. The banging above intensified, and the door splintered open, light pouring in. Miller shouted, "I'm coming down!" But Michael grabbed my arm, his grip vise-like, and pulled a second knife from his boot. "You're not leaving?" he hissed, pressing the blade to my throat. I froze, the letter crumpled in my hand. Miller's footsteps thundered on the stairs, but Michael whispered, "One move, and she's gone." The cold steel bit into my skin, and I saw Miller halt, his gun raised but useless. Michael backed us toward a dark corner, his breath hot on my ear. "Now we wait," he said, and the cellar door swung shut again, plunging us back into near darkness. The knife pressed deeper, a thin trickle of blood warm on my neck as Miller stood frozen on the stairs, his gun trained on Michael. I needed to signal Miller without provoking Michael, but any movement could be my last. Michael's hold on me tightened, his body a shield against Miller's aim. "Drop the gun, old man, or I slice her open," Michael demanded, his voice steady. In that standoff, I felt that my trust in the boy I raised was completely gone, and my life was hanging by a thread. Miller slowly lowered his weapon, his eyes locked on mine, a silent promise of action. Then a cell phone rang from Michael's pocket, an interruption that made him flinch. He shifted, the knife easing slightly, and I seized the chance to elbow him hard in the ribs. He grunted, and I broke free, scrambling toward Miller. But Michael recovered fast, throwing the knife. It embedded in the wood near my head. Miller fired a warning shot, the bang deafening in the small space. In the chaos, I noticed the letters I'd dropped were now scattered, and one had a photo stuck to it. Michael as a teen, standing with his father at Sarah's grave. It suddenly struck me that he'd been visiting her all along, mocking her memory. Miller pulled me up the stairs, but Michael was right behind, grabbing my ankle. "You can't run from family, Mum!" he yelled. We burst out into the night air, but Michael had vanished into the woods. Miller and I caught our breaths, and he handed me his phone. "Call for backup," he said, but the screen was cracked and dead. Then we heard an engine roar to life, Michael's car speeding away. I looked down at the photo in my hand, and my blood ran cold. On the back, written in fresh ink, was, "Next stop, your granddaughter's school." My heart seized at the threat to my granddaughter, Lily, the only piece of Sarah I had left. I had to get to her school before Michael did, but we were stranded at the cabin with a dead phone and a blown tire. Miller and I rushed to his car, finding the spare tire slashed too. Michael had planned this well. I felt a crushing weight. My family was in danger because I'd been blind to the monster in my home. Miller scavenged the cabin for a working phone, but everything was destroyed or missing. As we debated hiking to the main road, a truck pulled up, the local sheriff, drawn by the earlier gunshots. An interruption that gave us hope. I explained everything quickly, showing him the photo and letters, but he was skeptical, his slow demeanor a new pressure. "Ma'am, that's quite a story," he said, rubbing his chin. "I'll need to verify this." But then, a small surprise. His radio crackled with a report of a man matching Michael's description near the elementary school. The sheriff's attitude shifted instantly. He called for units to converge there. We piled into his truck, the ride tense and silent. Nearing the school, I saw parents gathering for pickup, and my stomach churned. We screeched to a halt, and I spotted Lily playing on the swings, unharmed for now. But as I ran toward her, a figure moved from behind a tree. Michael, holding a bouquet of flowers like a harmless visitor. He met my eyes and smiled, then melted into the crowd. I grabbed Lily, holding her tight, but a teacher approached, handing me a note. "A man left this for you," she said. I unfolded it. She has her mother's eyes. I'll be seeing her soon. My hands trembled, and Miller pulled out his badge, urging everyone inside. But as the school doors locked, I saw Michael watching from a parked car across the street. He waved slowly, then drove off, leaving me clutching Lily, who whispered, Grandma? Who was that man? I held Lily close, her small body shaking against mine as Miller coordinated with the school to lock down the campus. I had to ensure she was safe and expose Michael's pattern to the authorities, but the note in my hand felt like a death warrant. It was clear that my granddaughter's innocence was now shadowed by fear, and I couldn't let Sarah's story repeat. Miller used the school phone to call in favors, but the response was slow. Budget cuts had left the department stretched thin. As teachers herded children inside, a fire alarm blared unexpectedly, an interruption that caused panic. People rushed for exits, and in the chaos, I lost sight of Miller. I gripped Lily's hand, pulling her toward a side exit, but a janitor blocked our path, his eyes familiar, too calm. "This way, Ma'am," he said, pointing away from the crowd. I hesitated, and he smiled. It was Michael in disguise. He reached for Lily, but I shoved him back, screaming for help. Miller appeared, tackling Michael to the ground, but he slipped free and vanished into the fleeing masses. In the aftermath, we found a walkie-talkie on the ground where Michael had been, tuned to the school's frequency. To my shock, it was broadcasting a loop of Sarah's voice from an old home video, an eerie echo that chilled me. Miller secured the area, but Lily was crying, and I knew we couldn't stay here. We decided to move to a safe house, Miller's cousin's farm outside town. As we drove away, I checked the back seat constantly, expecting Michael to appear. At the farm, it seemed peaceful, but when I tucked Lily into bed, she pointed at the window. "Grandma, that man is outside," she said quietly. I looked and saw nothing, but then a rock hit the glass, and a note was tied to it. "You can't hide family." Miller ran out with his gun, but the night was silent. I unfolded the note. It contained a lock of hair, Lily's, from her last haircut. My blood ran cold. He'd been in her room. The lock of hair in my hand felt like a violation deeper than any threat. I had to end this now, lure Michael into a trap where we could capture him, but doing so meant using myself as bait. Lily was safe with Miller's cousin in a hidden room, but the risk of her being found was unbearable. Miller and I set up in the farmhouse living room, him with his gun and me with a panic button linked to the local police. The pressure mounted as hours passed with no sign of Michael. The silence was worse than any attack. Then the phone rang. A landline we thought was disconnected. I answered, and a distorted voice said, "I'm in the barn, Mum. Come alone, or the girl gets a visit." Miller shook his head, mouthing, "Trap." But I knew I had to go. I slipped out the back, the cold air biting my skin. The barn was dark, and as I entered, a figure stepped from the shadows. But it wasn't Michael. It was Mrs. Gable, her face pale and hands tied. "He made me do this," she whispered, an interruption I hadn't expected. Then, Michael emerged from behind a hay bale, holding a syringe. "Time for a family reunion," he said, advancing. I backed away, but he was faster, grabbing my arm. A small surprise. Mrs. Gable broke free and tackled him, giving me a chance to run. I hit the panic button, and sirens wailed in the distance. But Michael threw her off and lunged at me, the syringe glinting. I dodged, and he stumbled, dropping it. Miller burst in, gun raised, but Michael was already at the barn door. "This isn't over," he spat. And then a car screeched up outside. Dr. Evans, Sarah's former therapist, stepped out, holding a file. "I have what you need," she called to me. Michael froze, his eyes wide with rage, and then he fled into the night. Dr. Evans approached, handing me the file. "It's about Sarah's sessions," she said. "She knew about Michael long before she died." I opened it, and the first page was a drawing Sarah had made. Michael and his father, with the words, "They're watching us." Miller radioed for a manhunt, but I stood there, realizing the truth had been in front of me all along. And then, from the trees, a single gunshot rang out, and Miller crumpled to the ground. Miller collapsed, blood soaking his shirt as I pressed my hands against the wound, trying to stem the flow. Dr. Evans shouted for the paramedics we'd called, but they were minutes away, and every second counted. I had to keep him alive and protect Lily, but the farm felt exposed, with Michael lurking somewhere in the night. Miller's breathing was shallow, his face pale. Losing him would shatter what little safety I had left. Dr. Evans worked frantically, using supplies from her car, but then a noise came from the trees, a branch snapping, reminding us Michael was still close. Suddenly, headlights swept across the yard as a news van pulled up, reporters spilling out, drawn by the police scanner. Their cameras flashed, blinding us and adding chaos. In the commotion, I noticed Dr. Evans slip a small key into my pocket, whispering, "Safety deposit box. Sarah left something for you." The paramedics arrived and loaded Miller into the ambulance, but as I moved to follow, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "He's not the only one who can bleed." Attached was a photo of Lily's empty bed from minutes ago. I spun around, screaming for her, but Miller's cousin emerged from the house, confused. "She's right here," he said, pointing to Lily clutching his leg. The photo was a fake, a cruel trick. Relief washed over me, but then another text came. "But the next one won't be." I looked toward the road and saw taillights disappearing. Michael's car. Dr. Evans gripped my arm. "We need to go now," she urged, but I hesitated, knowing he was playing with my mind. The paramedics drove off with Miller, and I stood there, the key cold in my hand. Lily started crying, and I pulled her close, my eyes fixed on the dark road. A sheriff's deputy approached, but his radio crackled with a report. Miller's ambulance had been forced off the highway. I shoved Lily into Dr. Evans' car, demanding she take us to the hospital where Miller was headed. We had to reach him before Michael did, but the roads were dark, and every turn felt like a trap. Lily sobbed in the back seat, and I clutched the key Dr. Evans gave me, wondering what Sarah had hidden. Dr. Evans drove fast, her knuckles white on the wheel, but she kept glancing in the mirror. Was she scared or involved? Trusting anyone now felt incredibly risky. Even helpers could be pawns in Michael's game. As we sped toward the highway, a truck swerved in front of us, forcing us to brake hard, jarring us all. It was a logging truck, its load shifting dangerously, and we had to detour through back roads. Dr. Evans cursed, checking her phone. But then a small surprise. She showed me a text from her own source, a nurse at the hospital who said Miller was stable but under guard. "Michael won't get to him," she assured me, but her voice lacked conviction. We arrived at the hospital to find police everywhere, and I rushed to the ICU. Miller was conscious but weak, his hand gripping mine. "He called," Miller whispered, "said he has a partner." My blood ran cold. Who else was involved? I stepped into the hall to call Lily's school to update them, but my phone died. Dr. Evans offered hers, but when I took it, I saw a recent call to a number I recognized, Michael's. I stared at her, and she backed away, her face unreadable. "It's not what you think," she said, but then alarms blared in the hospital, a fire drill, forcing evacuations. In the chaos, I lost sight of her. A nurse handed me a note. "Check the box." Sarah knew it all. I folded it, my hands trembling, and turned to find Lily. But she was gone from the waiting room, and a familiar laugh echoed down the stairwell. I bolted toward the stairwell, my heart hammering, but found only empty steps and the echo of that laugh. Lily had to be nearby. Michael wouldn't take her in a crowded hospital, but the fear was paralyzing. I raced back to the ICU, but Miller was asleep, and the guards were distracted by the false alarm. Dr. Evans was nowhere. Had she set this up? I needed to get to that safety deposit box and see what Sarah left. But first, I had to find Lily. This hunt was putting my granddaughter's safety at risk, and I couldn't bear another loss. Hospital staff directed me to a play area where Lily might have wandered, but it was empty, except for a stuffed bear she always carried. Then, the hospital PA system announced a code for a missing child, and volunteers swarmed the halls. In the confusion, I spotted Dr. Evans by the elevators, speaking urgently into her phone. I confronted her, and she admitted she'd been feeding Michael information to protect her own family. He threatened her son. "But I have a way out," she said, handing me a slip of paper with the bank address for the deposit box. I learned that the box was under Sarah's name, not mine, and required her birth certificate. I had it at home, in a lockbox. As I turned to leave, a nurse called me over. Lily was found hiding in a linen closet, scared but unharmed. She said a nice lady led her there, but described Dr. Evans. I hugged Lily tight. But then my phone charger I borrowed from a nurse showed a notification. A tracking app activated on my car back at the farm. Michael knew where we'd been. I rushed Lily to a police officer, but he was new, his badge crooked. "Ma'am, I need to ask you some questions," he said, but his eyes darted toward the exit. I backed away, and he smiled, a smile I'd seen before. It was Michael in uniform. Michael in a police uniform advanced, his hand resting on his fake badge as I pulled Lily behind me. I had to expose him and get us out of this hospital, but the real officers were busy, and his disguise was convincing. "Come quietly, Mum," he said, his voice low, "or things get messy." I screamed for help, but the hall was clearing due to a reported disturbance elsewhere. His doing. His manipulation was affecting everything. Even this sanctuary felt like a trap. He reached for Lily, but I shoved a cart between us, causing a crash that drew attention. Security rushed over, and Michael melted into the crowd, but not before dropping a keycard at my feet, to the hospital morgue. It made no sense until I remembered Sarah's autopsy was here. I grabbed Lily and Dr. Evans, who reappeared, pale and shaking. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "He has my son." We moved to a private room, and I called the bank. The deposit box could be accessed with Sarah's documents, but they closed in an hour. Dr. Evans revealed that Michael wasn't acting alone. His biological father had a sister who worked at the orphanage and covered up his past. I had to get to that box before time ran out. We left Lily with a trusted nurse, and Dr. Evans drove us to the bank. Inside, the manager was hesitant, but I showed Sarah's birth certificate, and he led us to the vault. The box contained a sealed envelope and a small USB drive. As I opened it, the bank alarms blared, a fire signal. People evacuated, but the manager whispered, "He's here." I looked up and saw Michael through the glass door, holding a device. He mouthed, "Too late," and the lights went out. In the dark, I felt a hand grab mine, Dr. Evans, pulling me toward an exit. But then a shot rang out, and she fell, clutching her side. Michael's voice echoed, "Now it's just us, Mom." I stood in the blackness, the USB drive slippery in my hand. Dr. Evans lay bleeding on the floor as I crouched in the dark, the USB drive clenched in my fist. I had to get her help and escape Michael, but the bank was locked down, and his footsteps echoed in the vault room. I fumbled for my phone, using the screen's light to see. Dr. Evans was conscious, pointing to a ventilation grate. "Go," she gasped. "I'll distract him." Her betrayal felt justified now, but losing her would leave me alone. I helped her behind a desk, then pried the grate open, slipping into the tight space. Inside, I found a network of ducts. But Michael's laughter followed me. "I know this building, Mom," he called, his voice too close. Sprinklers activated, drenching everything and shorting some lights, creating patches of dim visibility. I crawled toward an office, where I plugged the USB into a computer. It loaded slowly, and I saw video footage from Sarah's home camera, showing Michael as a teen arguing with his father about finishing the job on her. My stomach churned. He was involved in her murder. I copied the files to my cloud storage, but then the computer died. Michael had cut the power. I heard him tearing through the duct behind me. I burst out into a hallway, finding an emergency exit, but it was chained shut. Michael emerged from the shadows, holding a knife. "Time to end this family reunion," he said, advancing. I backed against the wall, my hand finding a fire extinguisher. I swung it, hitting his arm, and he dropped the knife. But then, sirens wailed outside. Real police this time, responding to the alarms. Michael snarled, kicking the extinguisher away. "This isn't over," he spat, and he vanished through a side door just as officers broke in. They secured the area, and paramedics tended to Dr. Evans. I stood there, shaking, the USB safe in my pocket. But as an officer led me out, I saw a note taped to my car. "I have a new target, your sister." My sister, who lived states away. I hadn't spoken to her in years. My phone buzzed with a photo of her house and Michael's text. "Guess who's coming to dinner?" I dialed my sister Janet's number, my fingers trembling as the phone rang. She answered on the third ring, her voice cheerful, unaware of the danger. "Janet, listen to me. A man named Michael is coming for you. He's dangerous, and he has your address," I said, cutting off her small talk. I had to convince her to leave her house immediately and go to a police station, but she lived hours away, and Michael could already be nearby. Her skepticism was a wall. She hadn't believed me about Sarah's case years ago, and now her life was on the line. I heard a car door slam in the background on her end. Was it him? She laughed it off. "You're always so dramatic," she said, but then her tone shifted. "Wait, there's someone at the door?" The line went silent for a moment, and I gripped the phone, my heart pounding. Then she came back, whispering, "There's a police officer here. Says he's checking on a report." Relief washed over me until she added, "He looks young, like that boy you adopted." My blood ran cold. Michael in another uniform. I shouted for her to run, but the call dropped. I tried redialing, but no answer. Dr. Evans, patched up and pale, handed me her phone. "Call the local cops there," she urged, but I was already searching for Janet's town police number. As I dialed, my phone buzzed with a new text from Michael. "Too late. She's inviting me in." Attached was a photo of Janet's living room, with Michael reflected in a mirror behind her. I cursed, telling Dr. Evans we had to go now. But then, Janet called back, her voice shaky. "He's gone? But he left this," she said. I heard her fumbling with something. "A note for you." She read it aloud. "Tell Mum I'm just getting started." Then a crash echoed through the phone, and the line went dead again. I stood there, frozen, until Dr. Evans grabbed my arm. "We need to move," she said, but my legs felt like lead. The USB drive in my pocket felt heavier, and I knew I had to use it. But how? Suddenly, my phone lit up with a location pin. Janet's house, sent from her number. But it was moving, fast. Michael had taken her. I shoved the phone into Dr. Evans' hands, showing her the moving location pin. "He has Janet," I said, my voice tight. We had to follow that signal and intercept them before he could hurt her. But we were states away, and every minute counted. Dr. Evans called in a favor with a pilot friend for a small plane, but it meant using up the last of my savings and risking exposure in a small airport. Michael was relentless. He texted me updates like a cruel game. "She's telling me stories about you," followed by an audio clip of Janet crying. On the drive to the airfield, I reviewed the USB files on a laptop. The video showed Michael and his father planning Sarah's murder, but there was more. Financial records linking Michael to offshore accounts. Suddenly, the car swerved. A tire blew, forcing us to the shoulder. Dr. Evans checked it and found a nail, too perfectly placed. As we changed the tire, a truck pulled over, offering help. The driver was friendly, but I noticed a symbol on his keychain matching one from Michael's cabin. I declined quickly, and we sped off. But the unexpected stop cost us precious time. At the airfield, the pilot was nervous, saying he'd received a threat if he helped us. I persuaded him with cash, and we took off, the plane rattling in the wind. Below, I saw forests and highways, the location pins still moving toward a remote area. Dr. Evans dozed off, and I checked the USB again, finding a hidden folder, Sarah's diary entries, scanned and dated after her death. How? My hands shook as I read one. "If you're reading this, I'm gone, and Michael is involved." The plane hit turbulence, jolting us awake. The pilot pointed ahead. "Storm's coming," he said, but then his radio crackled with a warning: unauthorized aircraft in the area. I looked out the window and saw a drone hovering close, its camera lens glinting. It flew nearer, and a message flashed from its lights: "Turn back, or she dies." The pilot panicked, and the plane dipped sharply. I gripped my seat, watching the drone circle like a vulture. The drone matched our speed, its red lights blinking in a menacing pattern as the pilot struggled to stabilize the plane. I had to disable that drone or force it away, but we were thousands of feet in the air, and Janet's location was fading in and out. Dr. Evans woke up, saw the drone, and grabbed the laptop, trying to hack its signal. "I have some experience with this," she said, her fingers flying over the keys. It was clear that if she failed, we could crash, or Janet could be lost forever. Michael became even more aggressive. The drone released a small object that hit the wing. A tracker, not a bomb, but a message of his control. Then, the plane's engine sputtered, and the pilot shouted about fuel loss. Dr. Evans found a vulnerability in the drone's frequency and jammed it, causing the drone to veer off and crash into the clouds. We breathed a sigh of relief, but the plane was losing altitude fast. The pilot aimed for an emergency landing on a rural road below. As we descended, I spotted the location pin stationary now, a wooded area with a lone cabin. We crash-landed roughly, everyone shaken but unharmed. The pilot called for help, but Dr. Evans and I took a backpack with supplies and headed toward the cabin on foot. The woods were thick, and night was falling, making every shadow a threat. We reached the cabin quietly, seeing a light inside and Janet tied to a chair. Michael was there, talking to someone on a radio, a woman's voice I didn't recognize. I signaled Dr. Evans to circle around, but then a twig snapped under my foot. Michael spun around, smiling. "Took you long enough, Mum," he said, stepping outside. He held up a remote. "One move, and the cabin goes up." Dr. Evans emerged from the trees, but Michael didn't seem surprised. "Ah, the good doctor," he mocked. "Did you tell her about your part in all this?" Dr. Evans froze, her face pale. I stared at her and she whispered, "I had to. He has my son." Michael laughed. Family ties are so complicated. Then he pressed the remote, and the cabin door blew open, smoke pouring out. Janet was still inside, coughing. I rushed forward, but Michael blocked me. "Not so fast," he said, pulling a gun. "Time for a family meeting." From the trees, another figure emerged, the woman from the radio. She looked familiar, like an older version of Sarah. My breath caught. Michael grinned. "Meet my aunt, your sister-in-law, Carol? She's been helping me all along." Carol stepped into the light, her eyes cold and her resemblance to Sarah's killer unmistakable. I had to get Janet out of that burning cabin and confront this new threat. But Michael's gun was trained on me, and Dr. Evans was shaking beside me. "You never wondered why the adoption went so smoothly," Carol said, her voice dripping with malice. "I made sure Michael came to you, to finish what his father started." My ignorance had a staggering price. I'd welcomed the viper into my nest, and now my sister was paying for it. Michael gestured toward the cabin. "Janet's got a lot to say about you," he taunted as flames licked the walls. Suddenly, a car engine roared nearby and headlights blinded us. A sheriff's SUV skidding to a halt. Deputies jumped out, guns drawn, and Michael shoved Carol toward them as a distraction. In the chaos, I bolted for the cabin, ignoring the heat. Dr. Evans followed, helping me untie Janet, who was weak but alive. We dragged her out as the roof began to collapse. Outside, gunshots rang out. Michael and the deputies were exchanging fire. Carol tried to flee into the woods, but a deputy tackled her. I crouched with Janet and Dr. Evans behind the SUV, my mind racing. The USB drive was still in my pocket, but Michael knew about it. As the shooting paused, I heard Michael on the radio again, calling for extraction. Then, a surprise. Dr. Evans handed me a small device. "A tracker I planted on Michael earlier," she whispered. "He's heading to a dock on the river." I activated it on my phone, seeing a blip moving away. The deputies secured Carol, but Michael had vanished into the night. Janet clung to me, sobbing. "He said he's going after Lily next," she murmured. I checked the tracker. It was moving fast, toward the city where Lily was hidden. My phone buzzed with a text from Michael. "You can't protect them all, Mum." I looked at Dr. Evans, who nodded grimly. "Let's end this," she said. But as we moved toward the car, a deputy stopped us. "Ma'am, you need to come to the station for questioning." I showed him the tracker, but he shook his head. "Orders from above," he said. And I noticed his badge was the same fake style Michael used. He wasn't a real cop. The imposter deputy gripped my arm, his smile eerily similar to Michael's as he tried to force me into his SUV. I had to break free and get to Lily before Michael did. But Janet was weak, and Dr. Evans was held back by another fake officer. I kneed the deputy in the groin, and he stumbled, giving me a chance to run. Dr. Evans threw a rock at the other officer, creating a diversion, and we bolted into the woods, dragging Janet with us. This chase drained my energy. I was exhausted, and every step felt like a mile. Michael's relentless attacks were overwhelming. His network of fakes made trust impossible. We found a dirt road and flagged down a passing truck. The driver, an elderly farmer, took pity and drove us toward the city. On the way, I used Dr. Evans's phone to check the tracker. Michael was nearing the safe house where Lily was. I called Miller's cousin, but no answer. Panic set in. The farmer dropped us at a bus station, and we boarded the first bus heading that way. But it was slow, stopping at every town. During the ride, Janet recovered enough to speak. Michael told me things, she said, her voice weak. He has a partner inside the police, someone high up. That explained the blocked investigations. Dr. Evans worked on her laptop, accessing the USB files remotely, and found something shocking: audio recordings of Michael meeting with a police chief discussing cover-ups. We had the evidence, but getting it to the right people was the challenge. The bus hit a detour due to roadwork, adding delay. I watched the tracker. Michael had reached the safe house neighborhood. I texted Miller, who was out of the hospital now, and he responded, "On my way with backup." But then, the tracker signal died. My heart sank. We finally arrived, and I rushed to the safe house, finding the door ajar and no one inside. Lily's toys were scattered, and a note lay on the table. "I have her. Come alone to the pier, or she's gone for good." I fell to my knees, the weight crushing me. Dr. Evans helped me up, her face determined. "We'll get her back," she said, but I knew this was the end game. I looked at the note, then at the USB drive. It was time to face Michael, but on my terms. I headed to the pier, the night air cold on my skin, knowing Lily's life hung in the balance. As I approached, I saw a figure standing alone, Michael holding Lily's favorite doll. He smiled. "Welcome, Mum. Let's talk about forever." Michael stood at the edge of the pier, Lily's doll dangling from his hand as the cold wind whipped off the water. I had to get Lily back and use the USB evidence to stop him, but he was alone, and the darkness hid any traps. "Where is she?" I demanded, my voice steady despite the fear clawing at my throat. He smirked, tossing the doll into the water. "Safe, for now, if you cooperate." Failure would mean losing Lily, and that was unthinkable. She was all I had left of Sarah, and losing her would destroy me. Michael stepped closer, his eyes gleaming. "Give me the USB, and I'll tell you where she is," he said, his tone deceptively calm. I clutched the drive in my pocket, knowing it held the key to his downfall. Suddenly, a boat motor roared to life nearby, and a spotlight swept across us, blinding me momentarily. It was the police, but Michael didn't flinch. He'd expected this. "Right on time," he murmured, and then a shot rang out from the boat, hitting the pier near my feet. I dove behind a stack of crates, my heart racing. The spotlight revealed Dr. Evans on the boat, struggling with someone, Carol, Michael's aunt. They were fighting over a radio. I used the distraction to edge toward Michael, but he pulled a remote from his coat. "One press, and the pier explodes," he said, smiling. Then, a small surprise. Lily's voice called out from the boat. "Grandma, I'm here." She was tied up, but alive. Dr. Evans broke free and untied her, but Carol lunged, and they both fell into the water. Michael's smile vanished. "Enough games," he snarled, advancing toward me. I backed away, but the crates shifted, and I stumbled, dropping the USB. It skittered toward the edge, and Michael lunged for it. I grabbed his leg, and we wrestled on the wet wood. He was stronger, pinning me down, his hands around my throat. "Goodbye, Mum," he whispered. Then a gunshot echoed, and Michael jerked back, blood spreading on his shoulder. Miller stood on the shore, his gun smoking. "Let her go, Michael," he shouted. Michael released me, clutching his wound, but he kicked the USB into the water. "No evidence now," he spat, and then he leaped off the pier into the dark waves. I crawled to the edge, but he was gone. Miller helped me up, and we watched the water, but there was no sign of him. Dr. Evans and Lily were safe on the boat, but Carol was missing. Then my phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "I'm not done with you yet." Attached was a photo of Michael, dripping wet, holding a knife, with the caption, "See you soon." I hugged Lily tightly on the boat, her small body shaking against mine as Miller secured the area. I had to ensure Michael was captured for good, but he was in the water, wounded, and the USB was lost. The police dredged the river, but found nothing. No body, no drive. His escape filled me with constant dread. I couldn't sleep, jumping at every sound. Back at the safe house, Miller and Dr. Evans debriefed me, but I noticed Dr. Evans was nervous, checking her phone often. "He'll come back," she whispered. "He always does." The threat from Michael was still there. He'd texted me again. "The game's not over, Mom." I needed to recover the evidence or find another way to prove his guilt. Miller suggested checking cloud backups, but my account was hacked. Michael's doing. Then, something unexpected happened. The doorbell rang, and it was a delivery man with a package for me. No one knew we were here. I opened it cautiously. Inside was a waterproof case containing the USB drive, slightly damaged, but intact. A note read, "From a friend." "Who?" Dr. Evans paled. "It might be a trap," she said, but I plugged it into a secure laptop. The files were there, including new audio of Michael confessing to Sarah's murder. But then there was a small surprise. The audio had a timestamp from yesterday. He'd recorded it after his escape. How? Miller called for tech support, but the laptop screen flickered and a video played. Michael, in a dry location, smiling. "You think you've won?" he said. "I have allies everywhere." The video cut to a live feed of my house, where a figure moved inside. My breath caught. Miller rushed to send units there, but I knew it was too late. My phone buzzed again. "Check your attic, Mom. I left a present." I told Miller, and we headed to my house. But as we arrived, the attic window exploded and flames shot out. Firefighters were called, but the damage was done. In the rubble, we found a box of Sarah's old things, untouched except for one item, a locket I'd never seen, with a photo of Michael and his father inside. My hands trembled. Then, a neighbor approached, handing me a note. "A man gave me this," she said. I unfolded it. "Your turn to burn." The fire consumed my home, the flames reflecting in my eyes as I stood helpless on the sidewalk. I had to stop Michael before he destroyed everything I loved, but the evidence felt useless if he could always retaliate. Miller and I moved to a hotel with Lily and Dr. Evans, but the fear was constant. Michael knew our every move. He texted me a list of dates and places, all connected to Sarah's case, with the last one being her grave. "Meet me there at midnight," he wrote. "Alone. Or the doctor's son disappears." Dr. Evans broke down, confessing she'd been feeding him information to protect her boy. I had to go, but Miller insisted on backup. At the cemetery, the air was thick with mist, and the stones loomed like ghosts. I walked to Sarah's plot, my heart heavy. Michael emerged from behind a large oak, his shoulder bandaged, but his stance strong. "You brought company," he said, nodding toward the shadows where Miller and officers lurked. "That breaks our deal." He held up a phone, a live video of Dr. Evans's son, tied up in a dark room. I had to act fast. I showed him the USB, pretending to hand it over, but I'd made copies. "Let the boy go," I demanded. Michael laughed. "First, tell me why you took me in," he said, his voice soft. "Did you ever love me?" The question threw me. It was something I hadn't expected. I hesitated, and in that moment, a figure rushed from the trees, Carol, soaked and wild-eyed, holding a knife. "He's mine!" she screamed, lunging at Michael. They struggled, and the phone fell, the video cutting out. Miller and the police moved in, but Carol stabbed Michael in the side before she was subdued. He collapsed, groaning, and I knelt beside him. "Why?" I whispered. He smiled weakly. "Because Dad wanted you to suffer," he said. And then there was a sudden turn. He pressed a button on his watch, and a bomb under Sarah's headstone beeped. 5 minutes, he coughed. The police evacuated the area, but I stayed, trying to disarm it. Miller pulled me away, but not before I saw a small locket around Michael's neck. It matched the one from my attic. Inside was a photo of me and Sarah. My blood ran cold. As we ran, the bomb detonated, destroying the grave. In the chaos, Michael was loaded into an ambulance, but Carol was gone. My phone buzzed. A text from her. "He's not the only one who remembers Sarah." I stood in the wreckage, realizing the war was far from over. The bomb's echo faded, leaving Sarah's grave a crater of dirt and shattered stone. I had to protect Lily and end this cycle of violence. But Michael was in custody, and Carol was on the loose. At the hospital, Michael was under guard, but he'd slipped into a coma from his injuries. I couldn't get answers from him now. This battle had taken a heavy toll on me. I'd lost my home, my peace, and nearly my family. Dr. Evans was reunited with her son, thanks to Miller's team, but she resigned, too broken to continue. I spent days giving statements, the USB evidence finally leading to arrests in the police force, but Carol remained a ghost. Miller retired, handing the case to a new detective, but he promised to watch over us. I moved Lily and me to a small rental house, trying to rebuild, but the fear lingered. Then, something unexpected happened. A package arrived with no return address. Inside was a journal, Sarah's, from when she was a teen, with entries about a kind woman who visited her, later revealed to be Carol. I read it, and there was a surprising revelation. Sarah had suspected Michael and his father long before her death, and she'd hidden evidence in a safety deposit box I never knew about. The key was taped to the last page. I went to the bank, and the box contained letters from Carol to Sarah, apologizing for her brother's actions and warning her to run. But Carol had been too late. I realized Carol wasn't just a villain. She'd tried to save Sarah, but fear kept her silent. My phone rang. It was Carol, her voice shaky. "I'm sorry," she said. I wanted to stop him, but Michael twisted everything. She agreed to turn herself in, but only if I met her alone at the old orphanage. I went, with Miller covertly following. The building was decaying, shadows dancing in the hallways. Carol waited in the director's office, her face tired. "He's awake," she said, meaning Michael, "and he's talking." But then, a noise from the corridor, footsteps. Carol pushed me behind a desk. "He's here," she whispered. The door creaked open, and Michael stood there, pale but standing, a syringe in his hand. He'd escaped custody. "Family reunion," he sneered, and lunged at Carol. They fought, and he injected her with something. She collapsed, and he turned to me. "Now it's just us, Mom," he said, advancing. I backed into a corner, my hand finding a heavy book on the shelf. I threw it, hitting his head, and he staggered. Miller burst in, gun drawn, but Michael laughed. "Too late," he said, and the floor gave way beneath us, dropping me into a hidden basement. I landed hard, the air knocked out of me. Above, I heard shouting, then silence. My phone was dead, and I was trapped in the dark, with Michael's voice echoing from somewhere nearby. "Ready to play hide-and-seek, Mom?" I lay in the damp darkness of the basement, my body aching from the fall, and listened for any sound of Michael. The air smelled of mold and old wood, and I could hear faint, dripping water. I had to find a way out and ensure Lily was safe. But the silence was deafening, and I knew Michael was nearby, waiting. I felt along the walls, my fingers brushing against cold stone, until I found a metal door, locked but rusted. I used a piece of broken pipe to pry at the hinges, the screech of metal echoing in the small space. After what felt like hours, the door gave way, revealing a narrow tunnel. I crawled through, emerging into a storage room filled with old files and boxes. The orphanage records were here, and I spotted a folder labeled Adoption Histories. Inside, I found Michael's file, with notes from the director about his father's influence and Carol's attempts to intervene. I took it, along with a flashlight from a shelf, and moved toward a staircase. As I climbed, I heard voices above, Miller and his team, searching for me. I called out, and they found me, helping me up. Michael was gone. He'd fled through another exit, but Carol was stabilized and in custody. She confessed everything, providing enough evidence to ensure Michael would be hunted for life. In the weeks that followed, I focused on Lily, enrolling her in a new school and therapy, and we settled into a quiet routine in a small town far from the city. I planted a garden, something Sarah had always loved, and spent evenings reading to Lily, her laughter a balm to my soul. Miller visited often, bringing news that Michael had been spotted abroad but was no longer a threat to us. The media moved on, and the chaos faded into memory. One afternoon, I sat on the porch, watching Lily play, and realized the anger had dulled, replaced by a weary peace. I hadn't forgotten Sarah or the pain, but I'd learned to carry it without letting it define me. The USB evidence led to reforms, and Carol's testimony closed old cases. I kept Sarah's locket, but I buried the one from Michael in the garden, a symbolic end to that chapter. As the sun set, painting the sky in soft hues, I felt a sense of closure. Lily ran to me, her hands full of flowers, and I hugged her tight, knowing we were safe at last. The past was behind us, and the future, though uncertain, was ours to shape without fear.